The problem with electronic music is that it's too human. Now, upon hearing that, it's natural to have a cognitive dissonance to go, what? It's machine music. The beats are quantized perfectly in many cases. How can it be too human? Well, the first thing is we must realize, observing, that it's never ever just about the sound itself. The sound, of course, the machines are created by human beings. Not only that, there's a culture that revolves around it that is a direct lifeline. It affects what happens. Just like a DJ will get a very poor reception if he or she or it does not know how to read the crowd and generate that sort of flow. And then you look at it this way: if people were dancing, if people hearken back to the early days of shamanism and drum circles, the sort of very primal behavior, then yes, that is indeed part of our ongoing human condition. But that's not the only reason why electronic music is too human. One of the things that continually saddens me as I read a lot of YouTube comments, I read them more than I should probably. When I look at, my main purpose is to discover a lot of wonderful sounds that are out there, and I glance at the comments to see what sort of discussion is happening, if it's going to be particularly exceptionally useful and fun to me. Often, unfortunately, that is not the case. I would say more than 9 out of 10 times. Isn't that shocking? Often there are the same arguments, the same useless, very human, very petty arguments of, this isn't neo-trance, this is minimal techno, tech house, blah, blah, blah. And then someone else will say, just enjoy the music for what it is. Now, my own thoughts are, of course, in between, in which it helps to have words to describe them, but not to become pedantic, not to become dogmatic about genre categorization. I think another aspect of what makes so much electronic music so human is the insecurities fraught in creating it. Like, for example, someone can't really perform a virtuoso line on an instrument, so they program it in, and it sounds remarkable. But of course, it stems from the human, your own inability. It's like an alien where you get into the exoskeleton, you have to battle something that is extraterrestrial and frightening to you, and to conquer that fear, ultimately, though, you're still exposed, you're still human in that shell. I was just looking at StarCraft 2 photographs, and they're pretty exciting, I must say. So these insecurities, they really stem out of the cliquiness, out of where do I belong? Someone wants to be part of one scene, they become protective of it, and I understand that, but at the same time, they become self-conscious and they try to attack other scenes because they're afraid what they have is taken away. And this is, of course, true in other kinds of music, but electronic music, because of what it enables, just like how the internet amplifies our abilities to communicate out there, electronic music, when you're making music with so many layers, it could be one person doing so many things, there is just so much more potential to split and splice and dissect things. Now, within that isn't the problem, but it's the human frailties, the insecurities, the tendency towards that sort of weakness, wherein you wonder, really, where do you belong in the world? You have a self-identity crisis of what kind of music you really want to make. Are you making the music you want to make? Are you listening to the music you want to listen to because it's really what you want? Or is it because friends unduly peer pressure you and they laugh at you for liking something that really speaks to your heart? And that's a cruel, sad situation to be in. And also why at sometimes you go out with friends somewhere you don't particularly like, maybe a club night and something like that, you find yourself in that environment and you're uncomfortable. You're not fully in your own element. So I use the term friends rather loosely there. It all ties back into this. So regardless of the end result, think of another thing. Think of when we look at a lot of magazines that claim to depict human beings, which are actually grossly, horrendously photoshopped. That's not a real human being, but it stems out of human insecurities, especially for a lot of women. Body image It's very, very, very important concern. Not something you just even discuss openly. Often there are private and secret shames. And so often out of electronic music, because so much techno is made by geeks who have this propensity to be perhaps socially shy, but they make something, ironically enough, that lands on the dance floor and is often played for the cool kids. And I realize I do use some generalizations in speaking about all this. It doesn't apply all the time, but it is largely true from many cases, because like as with any stereotype, but notably this one that I'm focusing on, there are some precedents that come to live. And you can see this, of course, for yourself, looking at many YouTube videos. Just look at the comments of them. And it's really sad on one hand, but on the other hand, if you're aware of it, if you know what to do about it, and you can elevate yourself. And this is not to say that you become some fanatically, not fanatically is not the word, but some jerky douchebag. Doesn't mean you piss on other people's opinions, but it means you have an irreverent sense of humor sometimes to laugh at the craziness that is happening. And sometimes that helps you make more sense of where we're all going like that. So at the core of electronic music has always been the humanity of wanting to automate things so we have free time to do other things, just like people make lawnmowers and gardening and dishwashers, all that sort of stuff. It makes our life easier, but at the same time we wonder, are we getting enough exercise? Are we seeing the sunlight enough? And I have a funny family anecdote to share that sometimes there has been this traditional thought of get off the games and play a board game. Some people have written some really shitty ass columns about, oh, play a board game together with your family. But then there's something like the iPad, which turns that on its head, because if you're with your family gathered around that iPad doing the multi-touch thing, what is that? What is that? It's a board game with fancy blinky lights. So members of my family and I, we were gathered around. Each of us had a little device. I had my, oh, it's not here with me right now, but I had my, oh, it's right here. I had my little iPod. My wife had her iPhone and so on. And we were together. We were all together. We were conversing with each other, but not directly looking at each other. We were doing different things. My wife was playing Plants vs. Zombies. I was surfing the internet looking for different cool apps. But we were all there. We were all socializing, and that was very, very beautiful. It's not what used to be, but it's something new, and it's something that's fascinating and something I find incredibly passionate. The same sorts of things with electronic music. There will always be members of the old guard, like what Roger Ebert is currently saying, and terrible things have happened to him, but I hope they have not. Well, apparently my hopes are dashed, because his views of video games not being art is very, 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 very ignorant ignorant thing to declare. And I really enjoyed Penny Arcade's reply on the matter. You should look that up. Very, very succinct. But it's like, you can't get in an argument over things like this, because often the other person isn't even trying to have a discussion. That's the crux of it. They just lash out. It's like people was like, oh, Kraftwerk isn't real music. Real? We define real. And by the time we're finished defining it, some people will have continued to create. It's like, while some people are discussing what is art, other people will keep making art. And I'm with that second group of people all the way.